Namaskar. Welcome all to the Digital Health Conclave organized by Elites Techno Media. And we are going to have an interesting day today with several sessions which are going to talk about various initiatives are being taken by the government of India and various state governments and also uh, private sector entities on how uh, the digital health is being envisaged. And today, in the inaugural session, I am joined by an eminent speaker. He is Kiran Anandama Pillai. I'm sorry, Kiran, if I pronounce wrong.
That's okay. That's absolutely
I'm
fine.
sorry with. So I will just say Kiran. And Kiran is currently the advisor technology at the National Health Authority (NHA), which is implementing India's two large digital health initiatives: the National Digital Health Mission (NDHM) and Ayushman Bharat (PMJY). He supports both programs in creating digital public goods that act as enablers for the Indian healthcare ecosystem. And Kiran is a telecom engineer by training and was a founding member of On Mobile, where he helped build it to become a public company. And he is volunteering his time for various efforts, including at UIDAI working on Aadhaar and iSpirit Foundation working on Health Stack. So let me request Kiran to give his presentation and where he will talk about the health stack and how he's collaborating with the NHA in developing the digital health mission for the government of India. Kiran,
Right.
over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ravi, and thanks for having me here. So I'll make a short presentation, and I hope it's useful to your audience in terms of understanding how the National Digital Health Mission is actually trying to reimagine what will happen in healthcare. I hope, Ravi, can you confirm that you can see my screen, please?
Yes, yes, I can see your screen. All fine.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. So, just a quick, background about the National Digital Health Mission. This was launched on August 15 by the Honorable Prime Minister, where he announced, and some of you might remember about talking about the Health ID uh, coming on board. It's being implemented by the National Health Authority, and its objective is to create what we call as digital building blocks that will act as enablers for any part of the healthcare ecosystem. So today what we'll try to do is to understand a bit more about what are these building blocks and how do they actually work and how do they actually help you. But before we get there, the whole National Digital Health Mission is based on some very important guiding principles. The first and foremost is that of voluntary participation. There is no pressure or force on any entity to participate, whether it is the citizen whose health records we're talking about or whether it is the providers. So it's quite important that we find very strong incentives and values to make sure that everybody participates. And the second is that a lot of thought has gone into making sure that health records being extremely sensitive, that there is significant amount of focus on privacy and security of the whole system. There are, of course, other guiding principles, but these are the top two. And the third one that's important to understand is that in the long term, the National Digital Health Mission aims to move us from the current curative model to a much more wellness-centric model of care. And so we can understand that as we kind of go along. The National Digital Health Mission itself is being built in phases. In the current phase that we call as phase one, there are a few core services and registries. So specifically, we have the Health ID under the core services, which is a way to digitally identify any individual in a healthcare transaction. We have the Consent Manager and the Gateway, which helps manage and bring health records together and enables sharing of health records with consent, and we'll learn more about that. And then we have two registries, what we call as the Health Professionals Registry, so which lists all doctors, nurses, paramedical staff, so that you know who was the treating entity in a healthcare transaction, and all healthcare facilities, so clinics, pharmacies, hospitals, so that you know which was the location or the entity that actually provided the treatments. But this is just phase one. And over the next decade, actually, that you will see NDHM build a lot more building blocks that are enablers, including in the areas of telemedicine, e-pharmacy, health claims processing, health analytics, drugs, medical devices, and so on. So over 20 plus building blocks have been identified that could be very useful to the healthcare ecosystem, and that you will see coming over time. So phase one has been launched primarily in the Union Territories of India, where it's actually being field tested. And we are expecting that once the field testing is complete, we will actually roll this out nationally, and then it will start touching everyone's lives in India. Now, let's understand a bit more about Health ID itself. So the Health ID is a new digital identifier that the National Digital Health Mission is creating in the context of health transactions. And the idea is that you get your health records linked against your Health ID, and it's an option in the sense that it's voluntary. So you choose first if you want to have a Health ID or not. And if you choose to have a Health ID, you choose whether you want to provide it at a hospital or not. But if you do provide it, then the hospital has the ability to then link and share health records against that Health ID with you. So the Health ID itself, under the hood, we issue a 14-digit random number to be your Health ID. But to make it easy for you to remember, you can just choose something like your own. Like in my case, I've chosen Kiran MA at NDHM as my Health ID so that it is easy to remember. And all Health IDs come with a little QR code on the top, which makes it quite easy for your hospital to use during registration. So when you go to a hospital, you'll be able to show your Health ID either on your phone, they can just scan it, or you could scan a little QR code that is pasted in the hospital, and that's how you exchange Health IDs between yourself and the hospital. So how do you get your Health ID? You can just, it's very simple. You can just go to healthid.ndhm.gov.in and generate your own Health ID. Works on any mobile phone or your web browser. Or the next time you visit a hospital that has agreed to participate in NDHM, you will find that they'll have a desk where you can actually get yourself a Health ID. And this is especially important for people who are not able to do self-service, or people say who do not have mobile phones. So they can get an Health ID by just providing their Aadhaar number, and they can get it. Now, creation of a Health ID does not require your Aadhaar. You can create it just using name, year of birth, and gender along with a mobile number. But if you don't have a mobile, then the only other approach right now is your Aadhaar, and there are more new methods that are being coming out from the National Digital Health Mission. So far, we have already issued about 3 lakh Health IDs in the participating UTs, and that's growing every day. We'll talk a bit about how the National Digital Health Mission is actually enabling what's called as a longitudinal health record. So a longitudinal health record is the birth to death, in some sense, medical records for an individual. So today, for example, if you go and quite recently, I got my COVID test done from one of the labs. I gave a swab, and then I got a SMS later on after it was done, and I could go to the website of the lab provider. I could put that code in, and I could actually see a PDF report of my COVID test. So it is already happening that labs and hospitals want to share records with you digitally, but they're now doing it in a what we might call as a non-standard way. What NDHM visualizes, and the second thing is, while I'll get the SMS today and I'll look at the record online, in about a year from now, I would have probably lost it, and I would not really have it as part of my medical history. So what NDHM says is that, look, these records that are already digital should be held wherever they are created. So we call these entities where you're holding the health records as health repository providers. So usually the software vendor that is providing the health record continues to keep and store the health record as a health repository provider. And the only thing we expect them to change is that we expect them to now, if they've collected a Health ID, let the consent manager know that they are holding a health record on the behalf of the patient. So for example, what in the NDHM architecture we know is that given a Health ID, the consent manager knows that there are some records at Diagnostic Center X, there are some IPD records at Hospital Y, and there are maybe OPD prescriptions in Hospital Z. And this federated architecture then helps us actually pull all the records together at any point in real time when required to be, say, either viewed by a mobile app or when something has to be seen in the context of a doctor. So this is how the NDHM architecture for health records work. So this is a different diagram which kind of showcases the same thing. On the left side, all the entities like hospitals, diagnostic centers, and clinics, when they decide to participate in NDHM and start sharing information digitally, we call them as health information providers. And to do this, usually they use NDHM compatible software. And these softwares are usually referred to as health repository providers. Any data that is shared from a health repository provided with any third party has to be in a certain standard. NDHM has defined a whole bunch of standards based on FHIR. This is called the NDHM FHIR profile. So profiles are available for OPD consultation notes, prescriptions, discharge summaries, and diagnostic reports. So you can actually share any of these kind of records today in starting with a PDF and then over time evolving to a far more structured data. And anybody who wants to use these health data, so for example, for you to see on your own phone or for another doctor to see it as part of treatments, are called as health information users. And health information users can essentially access this only with your consent. So you control as a user when and how you actually want to see or provide access to your this one. So we'll talk a bit more about that. NDHM also has another concept that we call as a health locker. A health locker is essentially your personal storage of your health records. So while hospitals and diagnostic centers will continue to hold a portion of your record, you can take a copy of all of those records and store it in your locker. And when you need to share, you can say, share from my locker instead of sharing from all of the various hospitals. So a variety of hospital softwares, labs, mobile applications, lockers are going to be integrating with the NDHM building blocks through APIs. All of these APIs are published and they're available on sandbox.ndhm.gov.in. So any of you wanting to actually integrate can go look it up and start the integration. We'll talk a bit more about how people are integrating with it. I'm going to skip the video for today and talk a bit about how NDHM helps reimagine the hospital experience. So tomorrow when you go to a hospital and you walk up to the facility, you will be able to just scan your health ID at the registration desk. And the moment you scan it, the hospital will immediately get your name, age, gender, and mobile, and actually your location, like state, district, and address, to their own software, which means that there is no typing involved. It reduces, in especially busy hospitals, it reduces queues, reduces errors in data capture that happens. And right after that, it's likely that on your phone, you will receive a consent request from the patient, from the hospital saying, hey, we would like to access your medical history. So let's say you've gone to AIIMS, you're standing in the queue, you have signed in, and then you will get a pop-up on your phone saying, shall we allow AIIMS to get access to your medical history? And so you decide, what data you're willing to share from your medical history and how long they can have access. So you can say, I'm okay to let AIIMS have access to all my medical history for the past 5 years and let them have access for it for the next 2 months. And so those kind of decisions are completely in your control. After 2 months, AIIMS will not have access to your data and it will have to, you can control it. Second, you can grant access now, and then you can change your mind and say, okay, I gave access to somebody for a year, but I don't want them to have access anymore. And so you can revoke. So this whole consenting architecture that's part of NDHM is very unique to India. It's not there in any other part of the world where so much control on the data of the patient is actually given in the hands of the patient. Now, when you walk into your doctor, you're provided the consent. The doctor will have access to all of your medical history. They'll probably be using specialized software that can now look at your history and actually give better advice on your treatment plan. And then if they actually make a prescription or a OPD consultation note, you will now get it back on your phone and it'll get added to your medical history. So this is how we think the hospital experience is going to change for all of us in the next couple of years as NDHM starts to roll out. Not only this, so in this whole use case, we spoke primarily about what we would call as personal data or personal health data. NDHM is also going to change what happens with what we call as aggregated data. So NDHM requires every participating lab and hospital to also share certain aggregated information. So an example of this aggregated information would be that every lab would actually share what is the number of, say, HbA1c tests they did yesterday, and how many of those HbA1c tests are outside the normal range. So you can visualize that if we can have that kind of data from a large portion of all healthcare providers in India, what is the value that that data set would do from a policy making, from an epidemic tracking, and so on. And at the same time, NDHM is looking at architectures, privacy preserving architectures that make sure that even competitive information is not available. So while the participants would share this aggregated data, it would not be possible actually for you to identify where is the source of the aggregated data, because the data would be aggregated at either at city level or at a sub taluka level, so that we can't trace it back to the original source. And this is very important again, because no hospital, no private hospital, say for example, wants its competitors to know how many stents procedures say they did yesterday. And so the NDHM architecture kind of allows for data to be safely taken and aggregated for policy making without being able to get back to as to what is the source of the data, but makes it also highly trustable. The other bit that NDHM will do is to make anonymized data sets possible. So today, for example, if you were to go to a diagnostic lab and get an MRI done, some radiologist will actually look at your report, and then he will give you a film, and he will give you a written typed out report on his opinion. And when you take it back to the doctor is looking at the opinion and then glancing at the film to make his decisions. In the future, the lab will be able to share the full DICOM image of the high resolution with you. You will be able to pull that into your locker. And then when you go to your doctor, you will now be able to offer that full DICOM with high resolution to the treating doctor. And the treating doctor will also be able to pull it out, use specialized software to actually look at it, and then therefore do better treatments for you. So NDHM is also going to enable this, but it's also going to then enable some of these high resolution images and labeled images to be stripped of all the personal data and large aggregated data sets, which are very important for AI and AI-based training to become available. So this will also open up and enable a whole new set of opportunities. So apart from moving health data, NDHM is also focusing on claims processing. A large number of claims in India, in the both from public and private, today are processed extremely inefficiently, including the cost of processing a health insurance claim in India is over 700 rupees because it's all manually adjudicated. Now, this makes it impossible for OPD insurances to come in, where the average cost of the claim itself is likely to be less than 500 rupees. So in NDHM, there is going to be a health claims platform, and essentially a hospital will be able to create a claim using a standard that we are working on called the e-claim standard. And you can use the same standard for any insurance claim, whether it is public or private. You can use any software of your choice to actually create that claim, and then you can submit it to the health claims platform, which then routes it to the appropriate payer or processor. Now, because the whole thing has become digital, it is possible for your payer or processor to start using newer tools that enable auto adjudication of fraud prevention. For you to understand this, most of the advanced markets, including the US and many others, 90% plus of the claims are completely auto adjudicated by machines, which look at the incoming data to make decisions on whether to make payments or not. So that is what is going to bring the cost of processing down as the volumes go up, and especially as we go towards UHC. But the claim platform also makes sure that people like the National Health Authority or the IRDAI can keep an eye on what are the SLAs when it comes to processing of claims. Are pre-auths being given in the expected amount of time? Are payments being done in the expected amount of time, and so on? And so the whole architecture is actually going to significantly improve how health claims processing happens in India. This is also true for contracting. So a lot of digital contracts, a lot of paper-based contracts get signed today, tri-party contracts between insurance companies, third-party agencies, and hospitals. All of this is going to go digital with e-signatures and the claims platform holding on to these agreements, and that will hopefully help us save some trees. So we talked a bit about registries, in our opening block. So we'll learn a bit more about the registries and the importance of registries. Registries are essentially master data that needs to be very well managed for any good digital building block in a health ecosystem. And so one of the most important things on a registry is, if I say I have a registry of doctors in the country, the two questions you'll ask is, how complete is it? Can we trust it? How up to date is it? As the new doctors come in, doctors retire, doctors educate themselves, is there is there a process to make sure that this is all being kept up to date? So that's one of the core things of any registry, is to create strong processes that establish trust. So that's what we are doing. Every information in the registry is built to be verifiable and trustable. And two, we are designing very strong incentive mechanisms so that doctors or any participating member of a registry have a reason to be part of the registry. And we are identifying use cases that bring value when used from a registry perspective. So this is the way that we are building registries. I'll give you a quick explanation, for example, of how do we build trust using doctors. So for example, with doctors, we start when the doctor is still a student. We make sure that they sign up into the registry and get themselves an ID, and then they can send that ID digitally to their medical college, and the college verifies that they're actually a student working with them. So you can trust that this was actually a student. And then they apply digitally to their state medical council for a registration, which issues a registration number also digitally. And all of these data then rolls up into the National Medical Council. So by making sure that we are following and integrating the process into the life of the medical student, we can actually create very strong data and databases. But this doesn't end there. We actually have a way to make sure that we keep the data alive for doctors when they're practicing, including enabling them to do things like e-prescriptions, sign discharge summaries, verify themselves on telemedicine, and so on, and collect CME points. So this ensures that there is a need for doctors to continue to use the registry, and hence they will keep the registry's data alive and up to date. We have a similar thinking when it comes to health facilities. So what we are doing is, actually, we have worked with a whole bunch of licensing and certification authorities, health insurance organizations, and government health schemes. And we have looked at when a hospital interacts with these entities. So for example, if you are a hospital and you have an ultrasound machine, you need to get yourself a license called PCPNDT. If you have an X-ray machine, you need to get a license from AERB. Almost all hospitals require biomedical waste management. If you are trying to get your hospital empaneled with CGHS or with Star Health, then you need to submit a whole bunch of information and so on. So what we have done is we have collected all the information that all of these different entities require, and we have created a standard that we call as a health facility information. And we are bringing out people that we call as health facility verifiers, who will come in once to your hospital, verify all of the information, put that into the registry. And once it's in the registry, you can then do all of your interactions with all of these processes completely digitally with very low friction. So we're really working on an ease of doing business for the hospitals as the primary driver for them to keep their facility information up to date in our health facility registry. And so this is in early stages, and you'll start seeing this roll out in 2021 as we bring this to life. So this is all great, but it's also, a very challenging environment on how do you actually kickstart a new digital health ecosystem. So what the National Health Authority has done is it has launched something that we call as the NDHM Sandbox. So a sandbox is a place where we take all of our digital building blocks, and then we take these digital building blocks and these APIs, and we host them. And then we have invited anybody, and we have made the rules for enrolling extremely simple. You just need to be a registered entity in India for you to actually sign up onto the sandbox, and then you get access to all of the APIs, and then you can actually integrate your solutions and become NDHM compatible. So far we have got 3 different groups or cohorts that we are focusing on. The first is all the government software and government health programs. So we already have integrations from people like eHospital, which is a software that's used by public hospitals like AIIMS. eShushrut is another software that's used in public health hospitals. eArogya is a third software that's specifically used in the Dadar Nagar Daman, Diu, and Haveli area. So all of these people are integrating. Then you have the big corporate chains and labs from the Apollo to the Dr. Lal Path labs, which are integrating. And then you have anybody supplying software to hospitals or labs from DocOn to Live Health actually integrating. So with these integrations, we're going to actually go live in all of these UTs. And once we have seen how this works in the UTs, we'll then be going for a national level launch. So this, all of this is where working, there's the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, which is running on the policy. The National Health Authority is working on this one, and NIC is providing some of the core technology, including access to Aadhaar as part of this. So that's the end of this presentation. Thank you for listening in, and I hope this has given you a good idea on how the National Digital Health Mission is actually thinking about the digital health mission. Over to you, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. I think you have given a detailed outline of this architecture of this overall digital health plans. If you can just give some idea, since you have also worked with UIDAI, like how are these two projects similar or different? Like both are the massive projects of IT implementation, but how are they like IT deployment going to be similar and different in these two projects?
Ravi, I lost you a bit. Which two projects are you comparing?
Aadhaar and NHA.
Okay.
NDH.
Yeah. So I think there is a lot of learning that we have also taken from the Aadhaar world as we do it. In the sense, Aadhaar was definitely quite different from the fact that it was collecting far more privacy information. We're collecting your biometrics, including your iris and everything. And the Aadhaar actually had to build at the time, and today all of your biometric data is actually stored in very dedicated data centers that are built for that specific purpose. In the NDHM architecture, while I showed you those building blocks, we have actually designed the architecture in such a way so that NDHM itself does not hold any private data of yours. So apart from knowing that there is somebody called Ravi and that Ravi has some digital data spread across these hospitals and labs, NDHM itself knows nothing else. So we do not have the same pressures that, say, the Aadhaar had. That's one part of the thing. Two, of course, Aadhaar had to go out with a very strong enrollment drive and actually enroll, 1 billion or so people. And the big test of technology there was actually deduplication. Could biometric technology, because at the time when Aadhaar started, the world's largest biometric database was no more than 100 million. And we were saying, okay, we are going to deduplicate it over 10 or 14 times that number. So luckily, NDHM is actually largely built on far more proven technologies. So we have been able to adopt some of these standards that have evolved over a long period of time from the West, especially FHIR. And so we are really bringing in existing technology layers to that. But I think the core thing here is the ecosystem development. What India, unlike many of the Western markets where digital healthcare development was largely pushed by the payers or insurers, because such a large percentage of their market works on insured patients. If you go to the UK, or if you go to UK is completely public driven. If you go to the US, it's very rare for you to get yourself either an OPD or an IPD without some form of insurance being in play. But India being very large on out of pocket, and for most healthcare providers, cash or out of pocket payments tends to be still a very large portion of the revenue. So the approach to getting them to participate in NDHM, because everything in NDHM is voluntary, is going to be the biggest challenge. So in Aadhaar did not have this level of challenge in terms of ecosystem development. So Aadhaar had a larger technical challenge, had a more security and privacy challenge than I think we do. But we have a bigger challenge in I think ecosystem development and getting participation to happen well, given that we have to find appropriate incentives and value for every entity in the ecosystem. I hope that helps.
Yes, yes, of course, it does help. And I think last the question which I want to ask you is that how what is the like journey looking like? How long it takes to implement
Yeah.
something
So
like NDH?
I will give you some some parallels on this, and that will help you. For Aadhaar itself, we started in about late 2008, 2009 actually, and by the time we covered all of the country, it was almost 2016. So that was the journey. UPI, which now does billions of transactions that you talk about, is already about 6 years old. So it took more than 3 years before you could see that it had reached a tipping point where it was starting to touch people's lives. Our own expectation is quite similar on NDHM. I think before it touches, so we are expecting in about 2 years, we will touch more than 100 to 150 million lives, in the sense that 100 to 150 million people are likely to have health IDs, will have started experiencing what it means to get digital health records and experience sharing of their digital health records. And when that happens, then there will be immense pressure on the system for everybody in healthcare to say, okay, it's like if you go to one hospital, you are getting your records digitally. You go to a different hospital, you are not getting it. So that starts putting pressure on the system to say, okay, everybody and others also have to participate because there is value. So I think it will touch your and my life within 3 years for sure, Ravi. So I think it will start making a big difference in about 3 years for both of us.
Amazing, amazing. So it's like 3 years is a very aggressive timeline.
I think it's very realistic too. I've been
Yes.
looking at how much interest there is in the ecosystem. The fact that we had more than 400 applicants who have signed on to our sandbox and started integrating shows a very, very strong interest. Industry has been calling this the UPI moment of healthcare. That helps because people saw that UPI actually transformed many things. So there's a lot of, I think, positive support that we have seen for this initiative.
And do you think that this NDHM initiative is going to lead to a lot more health startups in the country? And
Without
yeah.
doubt. So I think NDHM will require a new class of software players to emerge who provide these NDHM compatible services to labs, softwares, insurers, consumers. Every entity is going to have to be touched in some sense, and there is some benefit or some value for every entity from the unlocking of health data. So we are definitely going to see the emergence, and in fact, we are seeing quite a bit of excitement even in the VC world. VCs keep reaching out and trying to understand which are the areas that are likely to get unlocked first, so that they can actually support startups in that space. So I would definitely encourage startups to actively keep an eye out, start participating, start getting involved on the sandbox, so that you can understand how this can add value to your own ecosystem.
Fantastic. And what are the regulatory issues like which still have to be sorted to implement NDHM? Like all the states
so
have
we
to.
in fact happy to share that there was right now we think that the existing laws are good enough to implement whatever we are doing in NDHM, though it will really kind of get strengthened when the government passes what's now called the Personal Data Protection Bill, which is in Parliament. So we keep hearing, we heard that the committee, it was referred to a parliamentary committee. The parliamentary committee has completed most of its discussions. So we think that in the next session, it is likely that this bill will get tabled. So having the Personal Data Protection Bill, which is not specific to healthcare, but it's just about how any entity which has your personal data, whether it's a financial institution, whether it's healthcare or anything else, will have to behave, is something that's going to help. The good news is, since the bill was, a draft of the bill was already available when NDHM started, we have taken a lot of pain and effort to make sure that we are fully compliant with the current provisions of the bill, right? So what the bill refers to, so the whole consenting architecture that you see is something that is completely aligned. So just by adopting NDHM, any hospital or lab or this one can make sure that they're also compliant with the upcoming personal data protection bill. So that's one advantage. The second thing is we have also kind of enshrined all of these into something that's called the health data management policy. In fact, the health data management policy was first published as a draft by NHA. It got more than 7,000 public comments. It shows you that there's a lot of interest in this topic from the market. It took us quite some time to actually go through all of those comments, incorporate those changes, and I'm happy to share that just about 3 days back, the health data management policy was approved by the health minister, and it is now published on the NDHM website, so you can take a look at it. So between the health data management policy, which is a binding policy that forces us to comply on how we deal with data privacy and data security, and what are the rights and what are the things that hospitals can do, what different entities which have access to health data can do. Between this policy as well as the upcoming data protection bill, I think from a regulatory perspective, we are on a very, very strong footing to actually make sure that the new health data or the vision of NDHM can actually be realized.
And do you think that private hospitals will adopt this first, or the government hospitals will adopt this first?
So we had the very first approval of somebody who met. So the way this works is, you come into the sandbox, you integrate with the APIs, and then we have actually a certification process. So we test whether you are meeting all of the requirements of NDHM. The very first guys who have cleared it is actually a government software. So it was the e-hospital software from NIC. So they have kind of finished it, and there are about 7 or 8 others still in the pipeline who are getting it tested, several of them private. So I think it's a race, and I think we are happy to see as much interest from public hospitals as we are seeing from private.
Fantastic. And I like telemedicine has taken off in a big way after the COVID-19 happened. So how does this NDHM incorporate the telemedicine components inside it?
Yeah. So we have in fact released an what we call as an EOI, or an expression of interest to onboard a telemedicine partner, and so you can see that. And I don't know if it's still on our website, but we ran that a couple of months ago. But you can easily visualize that when you are in a telemedicine interaction. Let's say you are talking to a doctor remotely, and the doctor says, "Hey, I want your health records, or I want to see your history." It makes it extremely easy in NDHM. On your phone, you'll get a pop-up which says, share your history with Dr. X. If you say yes, on his software, irrespective of where your health records were, he will be able to actually get a copy. When he's done with your consultation, if he wants to issue a prescription, he can now do it. And you will then see it back on your phone pop up, and it will be also part of your medical history. So in many ways, whatever building blocks that we have built are very, very powerful, especially in use cases like telemedicine. But beyond this, we are also going forward on telemedicine to actually do something called as demand aggregation, which is we are trying to come up with a way where any hospital or any doctor can participate in telemedicine very easily using a digital public good that we are designing under NDHM, but that's still work in progress. So you should start hearing something about that in January, February from NHM.
So excellent, Kiran. I think we are running out of time, so we will end this. I have a lot more questions to ask you, but we'll do that some other time. So thanks a lot, Kiran. I think this is an amazing revolution which India is entering now, the digital revolution in healthcare. And thanks for taking so much time to explain about it to all of us. We are honored to have you, and thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Ravi, and very best for today's events and sessions. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Namaskar. Bye.